Okay, we're going to look at what is referred to as the empirical rule in statistics. So this rule works when you have data that is roughly distributed in a symmetrical bell-shaped curve. Okay, and this pertains to the number of data points within certain segments of this curve. So let's say our sample is, or our population, either or, is roughly distributed as a bell-shaped curve. Let's say that this is the location of the mean, so we'll call that x bar for a sample. It would be mu if it was a population. Okay, so if I go out one standard deviation, so this is negative 1s to 1s, this is the mean here, that across this section of the population is actually 68% of the entire population is between the negative 1 and 1 standard deviation. So 68% of the population is within 1 standard deviation of the mean. Okay, so the second group is out here at the second standard deviation, right? So at the second standard deviation, which is actually what we call a point of inflection here, from at 2 standard deviations from the mean, this is 95% of the sample or the population is within that. So this is why we get to call this like usual or expected values. So usual values are within 2 standard deviations of the mean. And we saw that when we were looking at the idea of the range rule of thumb, right? There's a range of 4 standard deviations for most of the usual values. And then finally, if I go out 3 standard deviations, 3 to the left and 3 to the right, the amount of the population that is between those 2 values is 99.7% of the population. That's providing that I have a symmetric bell-shaped curve. Okay, so kind of like a typical example of this is like the standard IQ for people in the world is 100 as its mean, with a standard deviation of 15. So that means that this first standard deviation is actually going to sit at 115 and going down at 85. So this would indicate that 68% of the population would have an IQ between 85 and 115. The second standard deviations here are going to be at 70 and 130. So 95% of the population would have an IQ between 70 and 130. This would be the range for normal or usual IQs. Almost the entire population has an IQ between 70 and 130. And finally, if I go dropping down here to 55 and up here to 145, 99.7% of the population is going to have an IQ in the range between 55 and 145. So this is like applying the empirical rule to a specific mean and standard deviation. Now gives me specific boundaries, but the percentages remain the same. All right, thank you.